Knowledge workers operate in environments engineered to harvest attention. The result is a paradox. We remain perpetually busy, yet our most strategic work barely moves. We often attribute stagnation to a lack of motivation, but motivation is unstable, highly vulnerable to fatigue and noise. Relying on it creates a trap. We wait for emotional alignment before beginning, and when it fails, we default to the path of least resistance. High-value output requires the exact opposite of emotional variability. Serious analytical work, writing, or strategic planning demands stability and predictable execution regardless of mood. Reliable performance depends on a system built on deliberate pre-commitment rather than the internal weather of human emotion. Discipline functions as a cognitive operating system, a practical method ensuring your time, focus, and output obey deliberate priorities. This architecture protects finite cognitive bandwidth from noise and converts attention into durable, compounding value. Building this system starts at the foundation, the unyielding reality of your finite time and energy. Next is the middle layer, strict rules that hold output steady despite fatigue or noise. The final layer is execution, translating deliberate intention into finished, usable work. Escaping reactive busyness requires abandoning superficial productivity hacks and building this architecture from the ground up, starting with the bedrock of time. Time is spent with absolute irreversibility. You cannot find time for important work. You can only reassign it from weaker claims. Every hour consumed by trivial demands is an hour permanently denied to a strategic objective. This finite resource is destroyed in two ways. Distraction pulls attention away through external interruptions. Drift is quieter, action without a governing purpose, like endlessly rearranging notes or formatting files. Both behaviors break cognitive continuity. Once concentration is shattered, the mind must reconstruct the problem, the assumptions, and the logical sequence from scratch. This reconstruction creates the transition tax, the hidden mental cost paid every time you switch contexts. Even small interruptions, like a quick message check, create microfractures in your attention. Your cognitive battery steadily bleeds out before the real work even begins. As you jump between incompatible tasks, this tax compounds, degrading strategic judgment and artificially inflating the time required to finish anything of substance. Working 10 hours in a highly fragmented state produces diminishing returns because the transition tax has already bankrupted your capacity. Most professionals misjudge their days because memory edits reality. A day spent reacting to noise leaves you exhausted, and the brain easily confuses that exhaustion with meaningful effort. To correct this illusion, we run a strict diagnostic protocol, an objective time audit. The audit removes flattering internal narratives, forcing a direct comparison between intended time allocation and the brutal reality of actual behavior. The protocol is clinical. First, you record your intended target for a given block of time. Second, you record the actual behavioral evidence in 30-minute increments. This tracks exactly where your attention went, not what you hoped to achieve. Finally, you classify the gap between intention and execution, separating genuine deep work from the shallow administrative residue that actually filled the hour. This observation removes emotion from the equation, allowing you to identify the specific systemic leaks that destroy your schedule. You cannot defend your high-leverage hours until the ledger proves exactly how few of them you are currently protecting. Once we identify the leaks, we build the middle layer of the operating system, a personal standard of output. A standard is a defined, pre-committed baseline for quality and completion. It dictates what gets done even when conditions are average or poor. This replaces the daily habit of emotional bargaining. You no longer negotiate with yourself over whether you feel energized enough to tackle a difficult project. The standard creates a hard boundary, separating measurable, finished output from vague intentions or the feeling of trying hard. Under this standard, task execution functions like a logic gate in a software program. In a motivation-driven system, the task hits a decision node checking for emotional readiness. When the answer is no, the task is routed into an endless cycle of delay. The discipline OS rewires the circuitry, bypassing the emotional check. The task hits the standard, the rule applies, and the work begins. A personal standard turns output from a fragile psychological negotiation into a reliable structural certainty. The top layer of the architecture is the priority filter. True priority requires accepting a biological limit. You operate under severe constraint, which means ranking requires exclusion. Not everything can be first. We filter tasks using exact criteria, starting with consequence. What materially advances your most important objective if completed, and what carries a heavy cost if ignored? The next criterion is leverage. Tasks that improve your future time economics, such as building a reusable template or defining a workflow, act as multipliers. We also filter for uniqueness of contribution. Priority belongs to the work that absolutely requires your specific judgment and expertise, rather than tasks that can be delegated or automated. This rigorous filtering exposes the loud, reactive noise of shallow administrative work for what it is: low-consequence activity demanding immediate attention. Because high-quality concentration is scarce, your prime, front-loaded cognitive windows must be aggressively reserved for those top-tier tasks before daily fatigue sets in. Proper prioritization serves as your primary defense mechanism, protecting your most consequential work from the tyranny of the merely urgent. When you run this operating system consistently, the effects scale far beyond a single workday. In a world of permanent reachability and fragmentation, sustained focus provides a decisive economic advantage. Uninterrupted cognitive continuity creates total asymmetry. You process information faster, spot errors earlier, and extract deeper strategic insights than competitors working in fragments. This chart shows the divergence of two career trajectories. The motivation-driven worker relies on inspiration, resulting in erratic spikes of output followed by stagnation. By contrast, the disciplined worker accepts modest progress on ordinary days. Because their output is continuous, results compound. Small, disciplined actions that seem unimpressive on a single day compound over years into undeniable intellectual capital and market authority. Long-term dominance is built on the superior, relentless execution of ordinary things, rather than dramatic flashes of brilliance. People often resist discipline because they assume it requires living a rigid, punishing life. Real discipline creates freedom. It establishes protective boundaries that reduce mental chaos and eliminate the background guilt of constantly unfinished work. A governed life creates clean lines. It allows absolute focus during execution and genuine recovery during rest, removing the exhausting middle ground of distracted half-work. The difference between the two approaches is absolute. Motivation makes promises. Discipline keeps them. Accept your limits. Build the architecture. Define your standard. And execute.